welcome to the session on the outlook for 2022. And I'd like to begin by saying how grateful I am we're not doing the outlook for 2022 in January, because we probably would have missed slight developments like the end of free money, massive collapses in the stock market, first major international conflict in Europe in 75 years. There's been some stuff. So I'd like to begin by asking each of you to introduce yourselves, talk about what you do at your respective companies, and for everything that's happened, what do you think really affects the rest of the year and perhaps beyond? And what do you think is deeply true, particularly in technology, that I wouldn't say won't be affected, but will remain deeply true throughout all this, despite the turmoil? So.
Okay. So yes, my name is Jason Strle. I am with a fintech company called Wells Fargo. We've been a fintech for 170 years now. We have 42,000 technologists. We've got 80% of those are actually engineers. So we're actually a large software development shop when you put it through that context. I'm responsible for about 10% of our overall portfolio. I'm actually focused on internal facing corporate technology. So to answer your question though, what is all the recent kind of dynamics in the environment created for us? I'd say the one thing about being with a bank is that we're always focused on risk management. So always planning out the worst case scenarios and understanding how we would remediate that risk. So that doesn't, we're not jostled around a whole lot as circumstances in the environment change. But what has definitely been noticeable for us is talent. The ability to attract talent, the ability to retain talent has become far more difficult, especially in the field of engineering, which is where I'm focused. So, what it takes to actually attract the right people and keep them is extremely important. Making sure that that talent is focused on the absolute most impactful work we can possibly have them focused on is another important thing for us. So that is definitely one of the recent dynamics. I think the rest of your question was around what holds true.
Yeah.
So, again, given that we're always kind of focused on that risk management element of what we do, we'll continue to make that our top priority forever. And that has some pros and cons with it, right? And we can get into a little bit of that, but we'll continue to be very focused on the risk management side of what we do. That will hold true. And, technology in financial services, more and more, it is what we're all about. So that's going to hold true for sure.
Well, let me just ask you before I move on to you, Usman. How has the nature of that risk management changed? Are you using more and more data? Are you starting to apply more ML? Do you have more layers of security? Is this turning into a big capital cost?
Yes. Okay. So that's a short answer for you. So we have to comply with every rule, regulation, law in every jurisdiction where we do business. And that is a non-trivial task. So for us to be able to consume all of those instructions, essentially requirements, and then apply them in a controllable, repeatable, sustainable fashion to everything we do is a big challenge for us. And that's a call out to all of you to help me solve that problem.
The more call outs to them, the better.
Yes.
Outsource your problems. Usman.
Yeah, hi. I'm Usman Shuja, the general manager for Honeywell's Connected Buildings business, which is the buildings and real estate software business. Honeywell is on its journey to be an industrial software and a sustainability company, and I'm in front and center of those big initiatives. So I'm driving a lot of the innovation and transformation agenda. In terms of the trends, the two things that I feel are very deep one is I would echo with Jason is the people.
Excuse me, Usman, maybe you could move your microphone up just a little bit. I don't think. There you go.
It's better? Okay. Is the people. People's preferences and choices have changed. The way they want to work, the way they want to think about life has a lot of impact on how we retain, how we attract, and how we build talent. But the second one, which is very, very relevant to Honeywell, which is the system of systems. where one system is able to look at risk and implications of another system. For example, even in my business, which is a buildings business, has systems built of HVAC, cameras, access control. These are all disconnected in most buildings. And bringing it all together to make sense of all the data, to be able to make smart decisions, is very much a true trend that I see will continue.
And you mentioned something earlier when we were speaking. You said that kind of counterintuitively, the demand for buildings shows no sign. The demand for building upgrades, for buildings that can deliver information and interact better with the customers, is not slowing down.
It's actually going up because it was counterintuitive that people are not returning to offices. So would the demand go down? Yes, but at the same time, there were other sectors picking up. Data centers and warehouses saw massive growth, but all the secondary cities, Austin, Charlotte, saw massive development growth. And the way investors, real estate investors, are looking at improving the quality of their product is through technology. It's not always traditionally, it has been about location, 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 and now it's moving towards occupant experience and location. And occupant experience is delivered through technology, through enhancing, making people safe in the building, making the experience frictionless, making them feel good about themselves and having the right experience. So that sector, the PropTech business, is kind of taking off because of that trend, which seems counterintuitive.
Okay, Justin?
Yeah, thanks. My name is Justin Dolly. I'm the CIO and CSO at Sauce Labs. We provide a testing platform online to allow our customers to, we provide them with visibility, analytics, and expertise to deliver flawless experiences to their customers. You know, I'd resonate with risk management. I've been a security leader for a very, very long time, and I think that risk management just informs absolutely every decision that I make. And I used to work at Wells Fargo a long time ago, so I can bring that to bear too. But for us, it's been an interesting, over the last 18 months, we've acquired 4 companies. And so a lot of my purview, a lot of my focus was around consolidation and managing of expenses and allowing our customers and our employees to be able to collaborate in much, much better ways. And so I kind of feel like with the economic factors that we're all looking at the moment, that there's going to be this continued focus on consolidation and expense management and various other pieces like that.
Now, your company is involved in helping many, many other companies get their mobile app in shape, see how they behave on a browser, take themselves online in all sorts of new ways. Are they behaving differently than they were earlier this year?
There's a couple of trends that we see. One is that there's a dramatic shift to mobile. That isn't brand new to this particular year, but the shift is increasing in its velocity. Everybody is shifting to mobile apps. Everybody's voting with their thumbs. That's one thing that's happening for sure. So the other one is that the velocity with which engineering teams are developing is also increasing. So demand on ops teams and engineering teams to be able to build code, to be able to deploy many times an hour, if not many times a day, because they want to constantly be improving experiences and adding more technology and more features to their online presence. And of course, as we all know, the faster you develop, things like quality and security and issues tend to arise. And so we are seeing, though, despite the fact that there may be some quality issues in the code, the rate of deployment is not slowing down. So there's this huge focus on velocity in delivering code.
I think to sort of draw a larger conclusion from what each one of you have said, the kind of things we talked about here a couple years ago about cloud are now really building into the behavior of large corporations and a lot of customers. That is to say, AI and ML is delivering a kind of systems of systems views that we see not just discrete events with data, but we see connected behaviors, how one thing influences another. And that might be in terms of how you write a security app. It might be in terms of how you view the passage of people and HVAC and the use of water, or nowadays health requirements inside buildings, and also how much the emphasis in building apps has moved towards velocity, to send something out, kind of ping the world with it, see how it reacts, and then build back to that. That's a lot of velocity. And how do you think it changes things? Do you see that creating a problem? Do you see that creating enough strength that the excesses can be corrected for? I'll start with you, Justin, because you're seeing it up close at sort of an individual development level.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, look, the increase in velocity is definitely going to introduce issues. I was at an event last week and we were talking about companies that are adopting more of this attitude of just deploy and see what happens in production and then we'll fix it there. In the room, there were banks and healthcare organizations and so on that are much less likely to do those sorts of things because of some of the reasons that Jason talked about, right? Risk management is a huge part of, at banks, your business is other people's money. You've got to take that very seriously. Regulation. Totally. In healthcare, it's protected health information. You lose that once, there's no need to lose it again, it's gone, right? Because it doesn't change very often. But most of the rest of the organizations are moving a lot more to that sort of emotion toward just deploying and seeing what happens when they get there. So the onus is on us to be able to provide them with sufficient error monitoring in production to be able to tell them this is the issue that we've discovered and we know exactly where it is and why it happened, and so fix in place very, very quickly. A big place where we're seeing this is in gaming. So for example, if there's an issue inside of an online game, they're not going to take the game down and patch it and then redeploy the game because there's millions of people playing the game all the time. So they want to find out where the flaw in the game happens to be and what the nature of it is, and then fix it in place, because otherwise people will stop playing the game and most of them won't come back. Mm-hmm. So there's a big risk to business there.
Yeah, and I would just add, so we have 20 million unique visitors to our digital apps on a daily basis. So that is obviously it's a critical function. It means a lot to the customer. We are absolutely passionate and completely focused on making sure they have a seamless experience every time they go there. But it doesn't mean that we aren't willing to take the right type of risks in the right type of circumstances. So A/B, blue-green type deployments where we can deploy in a limited fashion using the automation that you're describing, Justin, is definitely part of our game plan, so that we can respond to customer expectations. The feedback loop from customers, that's no longer a suggestion. That is something that we need to be able to respond to relatively quickly. And through the right kind of automation framework in our testing environments and our deployment capabilities, and then being very, very intentional about kind of the blast radius that we can have if something does go wrong, that allows us to respond very quickly and meet the expectations of customers constantly evolving.
Mm-hmm. And we are probably closer to where Wells Fargo would be. We have, over COVID, we have learned how to operate our facilities and buildings remotely, and we are teaching our customers how to do that. But there's massive risk in industrial operations if they get interrupted, right? So there's a lot more cautious approach to it, but we are learning to do it faster and better, and there's an urgency to learn that as well.
Yes, and also there is, it seems, no replacement for taking something out in the world and seeing how it actually behaves. Yeah. And that's one of two ways in which experience is now king. We say customer is king or this is king. Now it's almost experience is king. How does this product exist in the world? How does the world respond to it? It's made from software. You can change that and adjust it. The key thing is to find its value right at the end point and then work back in some ways. And it's interesting, both Jason and Usman, when we were talking before, we're talking about the need internally to keep developers happy, to keep everyone happy with a good experience working with corporate technology, which is almost the woeful thing that needs the most attention right now.
It is, so when we're in a war for talent, which is effectively what's been going on for the last several months, everything that we do that adds to that frustration level of our key talent is something that we need to be very concerned about, very focused on. So to your point, end-to-end experiences, the job that the customer is trying to do should be our focus all the time as any company. But the job that our employees are trying to do is almost as equally important. The time that our employees are not focused on our customer is also a tragedy and a loss. So we need to be focused on what they're experiencing, making sure that we're understanding how we can reduce the friction for the employees. Does that make the difference between, you know, an offer that's 2x somewhere else? Probably not. In fact, definitely not. But it can add up over time to an overall frustration level. So we want to be very focused on that.
Right, and they are complete humans. They're having consumer experiences increasingly where they feel personalized and seen and understood.
Exactly.
There's no reason to think they're not eventually going to expect that in the office as well.
I completely agree, right? The consumerization and the expectation of employees, we got to treat them like customers if we were to retain them. So having, at Honeywell, we have that focus of treating employees and the retention and making sure that we are giving them the right experience for productivity purposes as well as retention. So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, internally at Sauce Labs, we've coined the term "every experience matters," and that's obviously got to do with what our customers are expecting of us and the value that we're expecting to bring. But we also, you know, internalize that to a certain extent as well, and make sure that, you know, those that are joining the company they thought they were joining, and make sure that they're aligned with everything that we're planning on doing, and so on, and make sure that their experience as a member of the team is as positive and fulfilling as possible. And I think that ends up, you know, showing up as we continue to grow and make customers happy.
These are fascinating topics, and in the back of my head, I'm starting to worry. And maybe that's my nature, but I did start out talking about war in Europe. Well, I see SaaS, publicly traded SaaS companies that are down 80%, and it's not over. I see inflation back. I see, you know, at the consumer level, it's shocking. And none of you are mentioning that. Are we just in a fool's paradise and this really is 2000 and 2008 and the magnitude hasn't hit us yet? Or are these, all three of these major events, somehow ephemeral to what tech is doing?
It's not. Look, for any global company, even if it's not global, the macro events, Europe and Russia, this has had impact. And I think John Chambers was talking about planning scenarios. So we got to think about scenarios, and we had thought through what if this happens, if we have to cut our business in Russia, what happens. So there was some mitigation, but so far the impact has been manageable.
Right.
But if it continues, it could be much bigger. In terms of inflation is very real, and there's no sign of it slowing down. So
yes, how often do you see someone want to renegotiate the building contract because all the supply costs are up?
Absolutely, a lot. And in the business, in the buildings business, it's not just software, right? So it's software, hardware, and services, and inflation really hits. And it's also the supply chain availability really impacts the timing, the cost, and there's some of the things we can pass on. And that's actually a good example of a system of systems. In order to manage inflation as a business, you got to understand procurement, supply chain, your suppliers, your pricing, your sales team's behavior, all of it to make optimal decisions. But going back to your point, we are seeing a lot of negotiation. We are negotiating with our suppliers. Customers are pushing us, and we are sometimes we can have the right negotiation, but we are arming ourselves with the right data to have that. In some cases, we want to raise price and pass on. In certain cases, we don't have, and get the market share, right? Depending on what our supply chain bench strength is, and the pricing and the market positioning is, we can make optimal decision and then train the sales team to have those conversations. So it's building a system of system has helped us handle inflation a lot better than other companies, but it's extremely real. It's extremely real, and we can't take that out of the equation at all.
Okay, and Justin, you said your company's done 4 acquisitions in the last 14 months. In the next 14 months, will you do 4 acquisitions?
I'm not sure whether we'll do 4, but we're still constantly looking at the market. I think that there's consolidation's going to occur, and particularly when economic factors tend to not look as healthy as we had expected them to. I read a quote the other day that said that sometimes you can increase your market share by simply surviving an economic downturn.
Yes.
And so, obviously, we're doing very well. We're growing nicely, and so there may be opportunities inside of the market for us to be able to. The timing may be exactly right to make some sort of a move like that. So we're constantly looking.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a better way to say this, but I feel like I've been looking for efficiency for the last 20 plus years straight. Just the nature of the two companies that I maybe worked with, it's just always under expense pressure. But again, I opened up with saying we spend $10 billion a year on technology. So you can get some serious infrastructure and capabilities for that amount of money. It's not nothing, but we need to constantly be able to do more and more with that. So that to me is, now granted, we don't know how things are going to pan out. We could have this again in 6 months, totally different story, who knows? And we certainly have the ripcords in place if it does go that way. But as it stands right now, I feel like it's still very much within the normal discipline that we've had around cost management for quite some time.
Okay. Bill and I were on stage earlier, and we were saying automation and efficiency is a theme that's been pretty strong for 200 years now. There's no reason to think that won't happen. What I am getting from all of you about 2022 now is there's more urgency and there's more caution at the same time. Like we sort of turned up both dials right now while we try to figure out what's next. And maybe that's appropriate. We are, trusting the deep trends. You are all building good businesses on them, and yet you got to think about how to weather the shocks to come with an urgency that you didn't have 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the foundational approaches that we've got in place, we believe in. Now, will there need to be course corrections as we go? Absolutely. Do we need to do a faster feedback loop on what our customers are telling us? Absolutely. Do we need to do a faster feedback loop on what our employees are telling us? Absolutely. So we need to tighten up our cycles, our cycle time for being able to observe and have the right kind of diagnostics and metrics in place to see what's happening in the environment and then respond to it in rapid fashion, but still maintaining all of the controls and risk management practices which are so foundational to what we do.
So that's an interesting conclusion. You have to tighten the cycle time with absolutely no loss of performance and integrity.
Exactly, yes.
Usman, what do you have to do?
Very similar, right? So we got to do more with less, and that's in an industrial company, that's always the case. So constant productivity, efficiency, but in terms of innovation, as you said, right, we got to shrink the cycle time, get things faster to the market, and be agile. And because the demands and the needs of the market might change, so we have to be able to address and take advantage of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. Something that both Usman and Jason just said was about tighter cycle times and getting more data out of the experiences that people are experiencing online. We have to bear in mind as well that the generations that are growing up with technology, that have grown up with technology, they're all now growing up and coming into the workforce and buying homes and getting married and buying cars and getting mortgages and all those sorts of things, and potentially buying buildings too. So they're a much more fickle bunch than we all are. They don't really have a particular loyalty to one thing or another. Like 20 years ago, to get a bank loan, you probably had to go into a branch, and you don't have to do that anymore. So the ability to shift between platforms is so much easier now, and that group is a lot less loyal and much more fickle than they once were.
When your behavior can be changed by simply nuking an app on your phone and picking up another one, it is a rather different experience of the world, isn't it?
It's that simple. I mean, even some of the ride-sharing apps, like almost all of us have more than one of them on our phone. And if we have a bad experience or somebody doesn't show up or the ride gets canceled, we just flip to the other one. And this is us, the younger generations are coming up with much less tolerance for those sorts of things.
Kind of judgmental, isn't it?
Well,
there we are.
I have 11-year-old twins. I feeling comfortable.
Usman, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I did want to ask you something because you were earlier mentioning something that I hadn't raised among my cornucopia of disasters, COVID and the pandemic. And you think that's perhaps the deepest change in behavior of all.
Yeah, look, I think if all of us, right, if we think about our beliefs, what we believed in 2019, and how many beliefs have changed about what we want to get out of life, how do we want to work, all of those have changed, and our preferences have changed. So that to me is a massive change in consumer preferences, and that's trickling into businesses as well. Choices on consumerization, working from home, or flexibility, or mission-driven. Sustainability is one phenomena that became very real during COVID because
Absolutely.
the mission orientation came to surface. So I think those consumer choices and preferences are very real. Another thing that there are a lot of startups also coming in this is mental health issues are becoming very real as well. They've always been there, but now I think there's better acceptance, and COVID has...
They're visible in a way they never were before.
So I think those are real, and those probably will not go back, because once you're aware of something, you want to be in a healthy building, you think flexibility at work is important. I don't think people will accept anything less.
I have time for one more question, and normally I would ask you people to rank this, but I think a more interesting way to frame this is, which of these, pick one or two, do you want to learn more about? Which is the most intriguing for the near-term future? Regulation, data and ML, security, financial behavior, or talent? Which do you need to study harder, lean into a little bit more in the coming months? They're all good.
They're all good. I don't know that you can pick one out of that list.
That's that system of systems thing again.
It's a
right?
system, yeah, there you go. I mean, I think that out of the ones that you mentioned, though, the nuances around talent, and even that extends into customer behavior, there's far more going on than I think we have any idea right now. I think that, years from now, there'll be kind of books written about what this pandemic did to people and people's behaviors socially and online, et cetera. I think we have no idea. So I think that how that affects the people that we employ and count on to be able to deliver our products and services is extremely important. And I feel like we're just kind of scratching the surface of that topic, and there's much more to come. But I don't feel like we can learn fast enough on that.
Fantastic. Usman?
As you said, right, these are all connected, but I have two clear winners in my mind: regulations and artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence and regulation.
Well, I happen to live in the security world, so I feel like I'm fairly well versed in that, although it does change every day. But I do think that the AI/ML components, the data components, are at the moment, I'm thinking an awful lot about privacy. There's obviously some movements happening in Europe at the moment, and I actually do believe that at some point in the US, privacy will become important. It's important to a certain extent, but I think at a regulated level, it's going to become more important. And so I think how we leverage AI and ML, what we're doing with all the data that we gather, and the security elements that we wrap around those, I think are very interesting to me at the moment. I think they pose a pretty big risk.
Okay, well, I am very glad we didn't have this in January because we did speak to the matters at hand, and I wish you very, very well in what promises to be some very challenging studies in the months ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you.